Today, we're exploring a discovery that absolutely shattered our understanding of the ancient world. Deep in the highlands of Turkey, there's a place called Göbekli Tepe. And this site, well, it forces us to ask a question that might just rewrite the very first chapter of human history.
So let me ask you, what do you think came first, civilization or religion? Forever, the answer seemed really obvious. But this one discovery on this one remote hilltop has turned everything we thought we knew completely on its head. Let's dig in.
You know the story they taught us in school, right? It's simple, it's logical. It goes like this. First, we humans invent farming. That creates a bunch of extra food, which lets us stop wandering around and build permanent villages. And only then, once we're settled with full bellies, do we have the time and the luxury to think about big ideas, to create complex religion, and build massive temples. The farm always came before the temple. It just makes sense.
And look, this wasn't just some fringe theory. This was the absolute bedrock of archaeology. It was in every textbook, taught at every university. It was practically the law of history. Civilization is basically a byproduct of economics.
Yeah? About that theory? It's wrong. Göbekli Tepe is the proof. It's the site that shows we had the story completely, totally backwards.
So here's our game plan. We're going to look at this impossible place, explore what it might have been, try to decode its bizarre symbols, dive into the debates that are still raging, and finally, see how it's forcing us to rewrite our own human story from the ground up.
All right, first up, to really get why this place is such a big deal, you have to understand just how impossible it is. According to the old timeline, Göbekli Tepe just shouldn't exist.
Okay, just look at this timeline for a second. Let it sink in. Göbekli Tepe was built way back around 9500 BC. That is an incredible 6,000 years before Stonehenge. It's 7,000 years before the Great Pyramids. I mean, this isn't just older. It's from an entirely different chapter of human existence.
And here is the real kicker. The people who built this, they did it without any of the tech we thought was non-negotiable for a project like this. No metal tools, just stone. No wheel. They didn't even have pottery yet. And the biggest piece of the puzzle, they were hunter-gatherers. They hadn't invented farming. So how on earth did they pull this off?
So let's take a closer look at the site itself. We're going to focus on the oldest, most impressive part of it, a section archaeologists call Layer 3.
We're talking about these huge circular enclosures, some of them 20 meters across, and they're lined with these enormous limestone pillars. The two pillars in the center were the biggest, standing 5.5 meters tall. That's almost 18 feet and weighing up to 20 tons. I mean, just look at the scale of that compared to a person.
And here's where it gets really interesting. These T-shaped pillars, they're not just abstract shapes, they are stylized people. If you look closely, you can see arms carved into the sides with hands meeting at the front. They're wearing belts, even loincloths made of fox pelts. But they have no faces, which suggests they represent something bigger than one person. Maybe ancestors, maybe gods, maybe the spirits of the community.
Now, you'd think the story of this place would be about progress, right? That things would get bigger and better over time. But that is not what happened here at all. The oldest layer, Layer 3, has these massive, incredible structures. But the newer layers built on top of it, they have smaller, rectangular rooms. The pillars shrink. They become part of the walls. It's like they went from a heroic, communal age to a more practical, domestic one. They literally started with giants and ended with ordinary men. This incredible reversal led the site's first excavator, Klaus Schmidt, to a revolutionary idea. The urge to come together and worship. It didn't happen after we settled down. It was the very thing that made us settle down. He thought the desire to build this massive temple might have been the reason we invented farming in the first place. Just to feed the hundreds of workers it would have taken.
Okay, so if this was a temple, what were they worshiping? What was going on inside their heads? Well, these pillars are like a library, giving us clues into the minds of our Stone Age ancestors.
Now, the art here is not what you'd call peaceful. You won't find gentle farm animals. Instead, the pillars are crawling with a menagerie of the deadly and the dangerous. You've got snakes everywhere. They're the most common. Then there are scorpions, aggressive wild boars, vultures. This was a belief system focused on powerful and, frankly, pretty terrifying forces of nature.
So why all the scary animals? Well, to get that, we have to look at the climate. Göbekli Tepe was built right after a period of intense global trauma called the Younger Dryas. Imagine the world suddenly plunging back into Ice Age conditions for over 1,000 years. It was an ecological nightmare. The people who built this were the survivors. So was this temple a celebration, or was it an attempt to appease the powers that had nearly wiped them out? And this whole debate comes to a head with one very famous pillar, the vulture stone. There's this one controversial theory that says the animal symbols are actually star constellations, and that the whole pillar is a kind of date stamp for a comet impact that might have started the Younger Dryas. It's a wild idea. But archaeologists push back pretty hard, pointing out that the pillar was built around 9500 BC. That's nearly 1,500 years after the event it supposedly depicts. It's a fascinating clash between a possible ancient memory and the hard science on the ground.
And if you thought the animal carvings were intense, get this. The symbolism wasn't just in stone. Archaeologists have found pieces of human skulls that were carefully modified after death. They were carved with these deep grooves. Some were even drilled with holes, maybe so they could be hung up. This strongly suggests some kind of skull cult, where ancestors weren't just remembered, they were physically present, their skulls maybe even decorating these faceless stone figures.
Okay, so let's recap. We have this mind-blowing temple built by hunter-gatherers, decorated with fearsome animals, and maybe even used for a skull cult. For years, the story was that Göbekli Tepe was like a cathedral on a hill, a pure sanctuary that nobody actually lived in. But, as you can probably guess, recent discoveries are making that story a lot more complicated.
So this is the big debate right now. Schmidt's original pure sanctuary theory was based on the fact that he couldn't find a water source or any signs of day-to-day life. But the new team, they've found all of it. A massive system for collecting rainwater, thousands of grinding stones for making food, and even the remains of houses. It sure looks like people did live here after all.
This leads to a totally new way of looking at this place. What if Göbekli Tepe wasn't the dawn of a new era, but the last defiant roar of an old one? As the world was changing, as farming started to pop up and fragment societies, maybe this massive project was a kind of conservative backlash, a way to bring everyone together and hold on to the old hunter-gatherer ways before they disappeared forever.
So where does this all leave us? Well, Göbekli Tepe hasn't just tweaked the old story. It's given us a completely new and way more complex way to think about the dawn of civilization.
So here are the big takeaways. First, that human urge to gather for a sacred purpose, that seems to be a primary engine of history, not an afterthought. Second, farming might have been invented just so we could throw bigger parties. And I'm not kidding, they've found evidence of large-scale beer brewing on site. But most importantly, this proves that the people who built this were our equals. They were intellectually complex people, dealing with massive change just like we are. They were not primitive.
And maybe the most incredible fact of all is that we've only excavated about 5% of Göbekli Tepe. 95% of it is still underground. And it's not alone. There are a dozen other similar sites in the area. It just leaves you with this one huge question. What other secrets about who we are and where we come from are still buried out there, just waiting to rewrite our story all over again?